while now, there's been this thing floating around called science. Basically, the study of the natural and physical world through experiments and observation. It's mental shit, mate. Fucking crazy. But even though it's brought us many gifts in the ways of technology and medicine, some people still refuse to believe in it, such as religious nuts, conspiracy theorists, and the non-binary gender fluid Ask Me My Pronouns crowd. And today we have Riley Dennis to show us why none of them will listen to reason. Because although they're completely different, they all share one common tenet. Feelings mean more than facts.
Hey everybody, so today I want to answer a question that a lot of TERFs seem to have. If you don't know what TERF means, it stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist.
Oh, well, there we go. I thought it meant grass.
These people usually don't like being called TERFs, and they usually call themselves radfems.
So why would you, someone who says you should refer to someone in the way they choose, refer to them as TERFs, Riley?
But not all radical feminists are TERFs. A lot of TERFs have XX in their bios for the chromosomes that they haven't had tested.
We're testing chromosomes now, are we? Fucking hell, man. You can't deny science, but use it when it suits you. And why test your chromosomes when you could just wait to see if you bleed out your cunt once a month? It's probably a lot cheaper, even with the tax on tampons.
But basically, their branch of feminism says that trans people don't exist. There are only cis men and cis women.
I fucking hate this cis business. I was fine with man, woman, and tranny, to be honest. We had them back in my day, and mate, they did not look good. Trannies didn't pass for shit back then. It was a nightmare for everyone involved. I mean, they could be spotted a mile away. Fucking nightmare.
And they explain away trans people as mentally ill cis men or cis women who just think that they're a different gender than they are.
Again, the word cis really complicates things. You're born male or female. You may get the old gender dysphoria and decide to transition, but you're still the gender you were born as. You've just modified your body to feel more comfortable in yourself and alleviate the dysphoria. Look at his face right now, though. It's like a horse halfway through neighing.
Obviously, this is a really harmful ideology that is explicitly anti-trans.
Trans! Don't forget the S, you jump-cutting bitch! Just because you don't agree with it doesn't make it anti-trans. They've acknowledged trans people exist through saying it's a mental disorder, which is kinda right, I think. In my mind, the mental disorder, aka gender dysphoria, comes first. Then comes the trans, when you transition. But it's not a cure, and it sure as shit isn't a third gender.
Anyone who supports LGBT+ rights should be able to see that.
Oh, so agree with Riley, or you're a bigot. Very fucking sly.
But unfortunately, I've seen a few prominent people entertaining the idea that TERFs have something valuable to add to the conversation.
Well, no one should be ignored just because of a label, Riley. I thought you were all for that, mate.
So I want to address one of their main talking points. And that is, if you bring up gender identity, TERFs love to ask, well, how do you define gender without relying on sexist stereotypes?
Fucking hell, you must have some wild parties, Riley, having conversations like that. Why not indulge in a bit of science here and say chromosomes, gonads, hormones, internal reproductive anatomy, and external genitalia? Oh, because then you'd be acknowledging that you were wrong about everything. Okay, carry on.
You can't. They really think it's like a gotcha moment, like they exposed all the trans hypocrisy.
Yeah, except I just described gender without stereotypes. Unless you're talking about gender identity, which is just fucking... I mean, you probably are, aren't you? Going on some difference between sex and gender. They're synonyms of each other, Riley. They're the same fucking thing.
It's ridiculous. But in case you ever run into these people and need to know how to respond, I got your back.
You stay the fuck away from my back, thank you. You might steal it to fill the hole where your spine used to be.
The simple, short answer is that gender is a feeling. It just is.
Oh, fuck, he tried to cover that by layering the sound, but I got it, I think. Gender is a feeling, apparently. Why? Because it just is. Fucking astounding.
And we know that because across cultures and time periods, there have always been a good number of people who felt differently than the gender they were assigned at birth.
Fucking assigned, for fuck's sake. Your poor mama knew your gender before you were born, you dickhead. Unless she didn't want to know and keep it as a surprise. I bet she's fucking surprised now, isn't she? If only she'd known, like, put him back up there. I'll reabsorb him and try again.
You could write all of these people off as having a mental disorder.
You don't get written off when you have a mental disorder. You get treated for your mental disorder, you knob.
But you'd be disagreeing with the American Psychiatric Association, the medical organization in the US that defines how we diagnose gender dysphoria.
And you would be ignoring the DSM-5, which lists gender dysphoria as a disorder. That's what the M stands for, mental disorders. I don't know why they didn't use the D, but it's not the same reason Riley doesn't use his.
Even the WHO will be revising its classification of transgender identity in its upcoming ICD-11 in 2018.
Well, that's next year, nigga. And they're only revising it. And ICD stands for International Classification of Diseases, so I mean, it's a disease for the next year, mate, at the very least.
You can't just say that everyone who is different than you has a mental disorder.
And you can't ignore gender dysphoria is in a book, the book, on mental disorders, commonly known as the Psychiatrist's Bible. Riley, you sat there and said gender's a feeling. You're off your rocker, mate. You're a fucking nutcase.
But even if some people require treatment for their dysphoria, the most effective treatment is allowing them to transition and live as the gender they want to live as.
So why would you get treatment for something that isn't a fucking disorder, Riley? If it wasn't, insurance companies wouldn't shell out for it, would they? Think it through.
Which is exactly what TERFs don't want. TERFs advocate for conversion therapy for trans people. That is, trying to make them not be trans.
So then they have, again, acknowledged that there are trans people, haven't they? For fuck's sake, this is 2 minutes into the original video and he's already debunked himself twice.
And that has been proven to be highly ineffective and in many cases is described as torture.
That's funny because that's how I describe your videos.
If you want to learn about why being trans is not a mental disorder, I actually have a whole video where I explain that.
Oh yeah, because I'm gonna trust the word of someone who says gender is a fucking feeling, aren't I?
But I think gender identity is a pretty simple thing to realize if you just think about yourself.
Maybe thinking about yourself a little less would do you some good, Riley, you know? You can't understand the argument when you only hear one side of it, you twat.
Let's say you're a cis woman and one day you wake up and you've had a phalloplasty and there's a testosterone patch on your arm that can't be taken off.
Oh, come on, I've only been a woman for a moment and now you're taking it away from me? Fuck's sake, man, that was the one interesting thing that's happened during this video, you bastard!
You would have a penis and within a few months you would have a deeper voice, more masculine facial features, and maybe even facial hair. Would you no longer be a woman?
No, you'd still be a woman, but a woman that has transitioned. If I was mates with her, I'd happily refer to her as whatever because we're mates. But otherwise, I owe her nothing. Biologically, still female. Socially, male to many. Like Blair White. I respect her, so I'm happy to go with whatever she sees herself as. You, not so much.
Would you suddenly identify as a man and be okay with people calling you a man? Would you then want to be excluded from women's spaces? Would you feel like a man?
In this example, you're a woman, and all of a sudden, you're a man. There was no choice and no mention of dysphoria, so all of this is just complete bollocks right now. None of it matters. If you look like a bloke, people will assume you're a bloke. I'm not gonna stop and ask. Ain't no one got time for that.
Probably not. I mean, maybe some folks don't really care how people see them, but for the most part, people like to be perceived as the gender they are.
But you're still basing gender on being a fucking feeling, Riley. You're talking about fucking telepathy.
And if someone misgenders them, they will correct them. So for a lot of trans women, it's like that unremovable testosterone patch that you don't want is built into us.
Nice analogy. Sounds a lot like a mental disorder.
Your internal sense of your gender isn't affected by the hormones currently in your body or the genitals that you have.
So it is all mental then. For fuck's sake, do you even write any of this down before you record? How do you watch a video back and think, yep, nailed it? How?
Your gender is how you feel and how you like being perceived. If you were born with a penis but like being called she or her or ma'am or miss and don't like being called he or him or sir, you might be a trans woman.
Nah, you're just fucking picky. How you started this by saying think about yourself, but then go on to how other people perceive you. You're full-on retard, man.
But what TERFs are thinking of when they say that gender is just sexist stereotypes is really gender roles, which are different. And by gender roles, I mean things like women wear dresses, they like pink, they wear makeup, all that kind of stuff.
No, those were perfect examples of gender stereotypes, you fucking nonce.
And they seem to think that all trans women just like that stuff, so they call themselves women instead of just being men who defy gender roles.
What in the living fuck are you on about? You can't be trans without transitioning, regardless of whether or not you wear a fucking dress. Transitioning is used to treat gender dysphoria. How the fuck were you the fastest sperm, Riley? Did the rest have polio or something?
But that's not how that works. Like, first of all, there are men who defy gender roles, and shout out to them because they're great.
Yeah, well, I prefer surgeons and doctors, but you admire who you want.
But the stereotypical things that trans women often like makeup and dresses, don't define their gender.
So you're saying wearing the clothing of the opposite sex doesn't make you the opposite sex, yeah? Are you finally speaking sense?
Trans women often gravitate towards those things because of perception. Either how those things help them perceive themselves or how those things help other people perceive them.
Yeah, okay, which would mean the whole point of transitioning is to integrate yourself as the sex to which you transitioned, and you would therefore not refer to yourself as trans, would you? Because that would defeat the whole point. So if gender is based on feeling, anyone who refers to themselves as trans instead of an actual sex aren't actually trans, are they? They're attention seekers. The third gender.
Like, if a trans woman puts on a dress in her room by herself and feels good, it's probably because it helps her see herself as more feminine.
Sorry about that little noise then. It's so fucking hard to do a Riley video. I think that's why you jump cut so hard, you know? Like a deterrent. Riley, are you referring to someone who has transitioned or someone with gender dysphoria? Treating gender as a feeling has knocked everything way off kilter, my man. You're fucking with some cornerstones here. Stop redefining basic shit so you sound correct. That's all you're doing. Like a flat earther of the penis.
It's a way of combating the gender dysphoria that she feels. If she then wears that dress outside, she might feel good because she knows that people are perceiving her as the way she perceives herself.
Nope! A bloke in a dress will always be a bloke in a dress. Normally it's comedy, but if you've seen Mrs. Brown's Boys, then you'll know it can be shit comedy too.
It's not that dresses make people trans, it's that dresses are often used to signal to other people that the person wearing it is feminine.
But it's up to those people whether they perceive him as feminine or just a fucking weirdo, and that is wrong. I mean, it's obviously both.
And it's the same thing for a lot of other stereotypes.
Oh, so they're stereotypes again, are they? I thought they were gender roles, Riley. My bad for listening to you, I guess. I mean, you don't do it.
Trans women often wear makeup because a good contour can make you look a lot more feminine. And trans women generally want to be perceived as more feminine because their external features tend to be more masculine.
Very good. Those are some other physical differences between male and female that won't change because of your fucking feelings. Keep going, Riley. You're making my job a lot easier right now.
But there are trans women who wear a full face of makeup every day, and there are trans women who never wear makeup, and they're both equally trans.
If they've transitioned, yeah. Otherwise, they just have gender dysphoria. Think of it as a kind of baptism, Riley. You're not Christian until you've been christened. You're not trans until you've transitioned.
Makeup and dresses don't define cis women, and they don't define trans women. Women are women, regardless of whether they're cis or trans.
No, they're still the gender they were born as. Saying a hammer is actually a Boeing 747 doesn't mean it's a Boeing 747, Riley. But you straddle it like a broomstick and see how far it takes you, and then tell the doctors you don't have a mental disorder.
Imagine if someone asks, how do you define being gay without relying on harmful stereotypes?
Now you're comparing gender to sexuality. Will the madness never end?
Well, the simple answer is, if you are attracted to the same gender that you are and aren't really attracted to other genders, you're probably gay.
What do you mean, probably? Attraction to the same gender. That's it. But if gender's based on feelings and homosexuality is an attraction to your gender, how is anyone gay? That would be sexual attraction to feelings, which does sound pretty gay, but you know what I mean.
Like, you could talk about the stereotypes around gay people, but we all know that gay people aren't defined by their stereotypes.
No, they're defined by their sexuality, before they're defined by their character, and even though that's not what the LGBT crowd want, it is what they seem to be fighting for.
They're just gay because of their sexual orientation.
Yes, because attraction is a feeling. Gender is not. Gender has a biological function. Homosexuality does nothing. Nothing! Complete waste of time in regard to humanity.
There are feminine gay men and masculine gay men, but some gay men might act a little more feminine to signal to other people that they're gay because that's a stereotype that we have about gay men.
Are you honestly telling me the stereotype came before the camp? Seriously, Riley, shut the fuck up. You're like 12 years old, you look like someone made a human out of the parts they had lying around, and you're chatting complete bullshit right now.
Just as trans women might dress a little more feminine to signal to other people that they're a woman.
Yeah, but look, if you have to signal it, you're probably not a woman, mate. If you need to wear flashing signs that denote your gender, I mean, that would make me question it more than simply going about your day, you know?
There are butch lesbians and femme lesbians.
Agreed. I call them Spartans and Persians.
There are bisexual people of all kinds of gender expressions.
And once again, bisexuals being attracted to both genders then become attracted to feelings, don't they? And unless you're referring to the guy from Sin City who can only get a hard-on when his victim screams, I think you're chatting shit.
Sexuality doesn't rely on stereotypes, so why would you think gender does?
Well, we don't, and they're different fucking things, you dribbling, crayon-eating retard.
Gender, like sexuality, is a thing that you feel. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. As in all the proof you have on the matter. That's it. It just is. The church method, isn't it? Where does God come from? Oh, he's always been there. He just has.
So the next time a TERF tells you to define gender without using stereotypes,
that has literally never happened to me.
Just tell them that gender is the internal sense of who you are.
Wait for them to stop laughing, and then
when they try to tell you that gender is defined by your genitals, remind them that genitals can be changed pretty easily with surgery.
Whoa, what the fuck? Mate, they turn your dick inside out. If it's so easy, where's your custom-made vag, fucko?
And that gender isn't the same thing as sex.
And then wait for them to stop laughing again, but they never will, because sex and gender are the same thing, with the mild exception of sex also being a verb, as in to sex a creature to determine its gender.
But that's a whole other argument for a different video.
Well, thank fuck for that. I mean, no offense, Riley, but you are one of the densest motherfuckers I've ever heard. One time, right, I was cleaning behind my bookshelves and I found this clump of dust. Massive it was. And as I wiped it away, it gave a little scream. Just a little one, barely audible. I'm pretty sure that was the only noise it could make, and yet even that had more of a grasp on basic science than you do. But hey, deny it when you're wrong and use it when it suits you, eh? That's the Riley Dennis way. Thanks for watching, guys. Please consider becoming a patron to fund my transition into a small beer keg. The link is in the description, and remember, if gender is a feeling, I'm hungry.